Hello and welcome to Lightways at Life Astrologer with me, Anna Isabel. I'm a psychological astrologer as well as an analytical hypnotherapist. And today I have Joseph Crane with me. Hello, Joseph.
Greetings.
I am so happy because I have your book here and it's called Astrology and the Lives of People, Finding Compassion, Character and Heroism in the Horoscope. And here it is. So
Yes.
this is a beautifully written book, as was the last book that I interviewed you about a few years back. I think it's very interesting because you talk about the 7 traditional planets as being all you need to to describe a person's character. And it's funny because I've often felt that way, even though I do use, it seems, the whole pantheon in one
Okay.
way or I love the way that the ancient astrologers, the traditional astrologers, classical astrologers had a very limited palette compared to ours,
Mhm.
but it did the job. So
Yes.
tell us about that from your
Well,
perspective.
first of all, in my practice, and this comes up with people who do astrology from traditional point of view, I use Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. I use them as they modify the action of the inner planets, and as they're on one of the angles, the ascendant and midheaven especially. So I'm not that kind of a fundamentalist astrologer, but it's very good, interesting how you called it a limited palette, because painters in the ancient world had a limited palette too, and they did some marvelous things. And I began to feel that, like, throwing a human being issue at an astrologer, and it's going to come down to often a sun-moon interaction. It's going to come down to intellect or love or affiliation or aggression or vision or being stuck. And so that covers a lot of territory. Now, it's true that we do have our Edgar Caseys amongst us. We have our people who have, like, profound intuitive abilities, and I don't want to take away from that at all. But my interest tends to be how a person works with the world in which that person lives. And most of my clients come to me with some kind of a problem. I hate my job. I hate my husband. I want to move to Mexico. I want to do whatever. I want to go to grad school, and I'm tired of being a starving artist. Maybe I should go into high tech. Well, it's one way, different way of starving, I guess. And from there, you can extract meaning, and you can find the trajectory of a person's life. And so instead of arising from what is my destiny, what does the universe want from me, it's like, okay, where are we right now? And the trick is, of course, to use the angles, the houses, the planets to try to get information. And so it actually brings astrology to a human level that normal people like me and you can interact with clients and students about.
I like the way that you've organized the book, because it's almost like it's got something for everyone at different levels of their astrological journey. So if you're a beginner, you can look at the sun and the moon and what they can represent, what they can tell you about the personality. If you are already a practicing astrologer, there's something here for you too. And I really like that.
And do you know how difficult that was to write?
I can imagine.
Um, when we just exchanged emails and you said, can we meet like right now? And I thought, oh no, I can't do that. And I thought, every day for like 3 years, I woke up thinking about this damn book. I think I can handle it. And I think because it's somewhat of a tightrope. I want to make astrology as inclusive as I can without dumbing it down. I want to use the pattern recognition I've worked on over years using some modern, some traditional astrological indicators, but I didn't want to overwhelm the beginner at the same time. And I had two people who helped me edit. We went from, I like this metaphor, went from my finished product, what I thought was finished product, to a strainer to cheesecloth. And to get the right balance between a sophisticated analysis and something that a non-astrologer could read. And I've given my book to a few non-astrologers and they liked it. It's like, okay, we've done something right.
Yeah, I like that. I like the fact that you've included some really good charts in there as well to illustrate different points without making it overcomplicated. Because I do find my eyes glazing over when I'm looking at a chart and it's look at this, look at this, look at this, look at this. And and I'm a very experienced astrologer. I like things to be a little bit simple, and then for me to be able to delve in and notice everything else and then come back. So I like the way you've done that. My students, I think, would like this book, and that's really good.
And what the way I've done that is I've looked at some people at different times using different planets. And so like Alice Bailey, I presented her with the sun, then I said, okay, let's look at her Mercury. Let's look at Mercury in the square to Venus. And so I did the same thing with somebody completely different, like Machiavelli. Let's look at this guy's genius, Mercury. Let's look at his sort of melancholy outlook on the world. Oh, let's bring him into Saturn. And so that was somewhat of a, it was a little like conducting an orchestra. Here's the bass, here's the woodwinds.
I really like the way that you talk about the moon very simply as being a way of determining or understanding what makes someone happy, because we always think about the moon as needs. So it's true, what do we need for happiness? And then we're thinking, okay, so what is happy and how do we achieve that? Because I always describe happiness as contentment, which is a word that you used.
Yes, absolutely. And it's a lunar word. It means that everything is going fine. However, contentment often means that people get stuck or they don't have creative responses. And so that we have to look at the sun-moon relationship.
I think too, the fact of the matter is that we may look to the moon to find out what gives us contentment. And of course, that's going to vary according to the that the moon is in, and then the aspects to the moon and the houses, etc. So I like that. I like the notion of the moon being associated with happiness. It's not necessarily what I would have said. I might have thought about Venus because of pleasure being, but now we're looking at different interpretations of the word happiness. Because when I think about it, when I'm working with my clients on the therapeutic level, and we're looking at what makes them happy, actually, what we're looking is at two things: security and contentment. And those are most definitely moon words. But if we're looking at happiness as what gives us pleasure, then that is in the realm of Venus.
It can be. I mean, obviously, there's affiliation, there's romance, there's all of that. There's being with your friends, and sort of having a good time. That's obviously Venus, but there's also the joy of solving problems. There's even the joy of going on a diet and being disciplined. And these are not neutral matters. And so, the five-starry planets are very much, I don't want to call them modifications of the luminaries, but they give us more detail. Where is your happiness going to be? And so, we can look at the five-starry planets as constituting, quote, character. It's like, are you a Jupiterian person? I mean, I'm a Jupiterian person. It doesn't take much time to figure that out. I love looking at ideas and comparing thoughts and seeing the big picture from different angles. I also have Mercury in Sagittarius, so there's going to be that. And these are things that cause me pleasure, but I can't stand word games. Puzzles leave me flat. I get no joy. Things that are inspiring to other people just leave me stone cold. And that's as it should be. Because what inspires me will leave other people stone cold too. And so let's use astrology to note our commonalities. We all want to be happy. We have different versions of what that happiness is. So we have our commonalities, and we also have our uniqueness, our untranslatableness, we call it.
Ultimately, this leads us back to the sun, because the sun as being associated with flourishing. And it is this very essence of contentment that we're talking about, which enables us to flourish.
Yes. Except for a few people who risk it all. And that's where we get our saints and sages and people who will just throw all kinds of normal contentment away for what they feel is a higher purpose. And we need to account for that and accommodate that and give it its due. However, for most of us, it's your basic, survival. You have to, if you're worried about surviving, it's really hard to find your passion.
I think, though, if we're looking at those exceptional people that you just mentioned, that would be their definition of contentment. When you're risking it all,
absolutely,
when you're risking it all, that is your passion, that is your joy. And so again, it's looking at the chart and asking the question, what is it that makes you tick? And then looking at each of those planets to see what it is that for you makes you tick. And then, yes, and then the sun, you can actually shine, which would be my definition of flourishing. You are shining.
Yeah. And you can also shine, by projection. And we see that a lot in the world. People, teenagers, and I was included at one point, a long time ago, teenagers have their rock and roll heroes on their on their walls. They have posters of people who they admire, who they kind of want to identify with. And that's a normal thing that everyone does. We could call role models, but they're actually projecting our own creativity, our own spontaneity, our own flourishing onto someone who seems to exemplify it better than we can in our normal lives. We sort of all need our heroes, but we have very different ideas of what that's going to be.
Yeah, and you know that you were talking about teenagers and their that idolizing that goes on, um, even with girls, idolizing other girls.
Yeah.
It's about really wanting to be that person, really wanting to be like them, to have what they have. Usually it's the allure, the
Yeah.
allure
Yeah.
that they have.
And it can go so wrong. That's why we have teenage depression, increasing with social media.
Yes, because if you are idolizing something that is not real, then you have no hope of being that.
Or what you get, or if you idolize something and all that makes you do is feel worse. I
Yeah.
mean, that's dangerous.
Absolutely, because again, you're idolizing something that's not real. So you can never possibly measure up to it.
Right.
And then that is the source of frustration and depression and I was going to say self-deprecation, but actually it's much more severe than that. It's self-hatred that
Yeah.
then use. So that's where things go wrong. What in your mind in the chart would point to such
Oh,
lack of self-appreciation?
oh, okay. Well, clearly we need to look at various afflictions, but with a jaded eye. Because we have different opportunities to overcome what may look difficult in an astrological chart. And sometimes there's no way of telling until you sit down with a person whether idealization is making the person actually enhance his or her life or diminish his or her life. One of the components of my book was just that on my part, that during the years 2017 through 2020, when I was profoundly depressed about the state of American politics, my therapy was to write 17 astrological profiles of people I admired. And, that included, Brits like William Blake and George Orwell, and Alan Watts is in there, and Americans like Walt Whitman and Eleanor Roosevelt. And I sort of look back and it's like, okay, these are people who, were mostly self-educated, which allowed them to think outside the box because they weren't except for a couple who were like academics, most of them were they sort of had their calling and they pursued it regardless. But they had some kind of a fight with either authoritarianism or racial prejudice. It's like, okay, this is why I admire these people. It's not because they were always faithful to their spouses or clean in their personal habits, any of that stuff. But they had something with which I could identify aspirationally.
Well, there's your Sagittarius, isn't there? There it is.
Kinda. Moon and Mercury.
Yeah, absolutely. Because what you said right there where you admire them, and then you worked out actually they're self-educated. Yeah, absolutely. Thinking outside the box. In other words, they are free thinkers. And I think that there's something to be said for that, because increasingly our schools are prescriptive, and they are completely and utterly denying children, and universities are right in there with this, denying the opportunity that we had to think and to question and to debate. So this is a very important aspect. And there you are with your Mercury and Sagittarius going, I like this.
We can include my Jupiter conjunct Uranus in the 10th.
We can certainly include that.
But also, and I want to think about that a little more, because educational systems have always been steering toward conformism. And I think maybe that's part of the nature of educational systems. And, and I'm not sure one era is a whole lot better than the others, although I think that the modern era is a little bit better than it used to be, although it sort of gives a more mediocre education. But I think of this when I think of my own background, my religious background is as Catholic. It's like, okay, I was born into and developed from a certain set of a certain foundation of values and concepts. And to some extent, I sort of assimilated them. To some extent, I rebelled against them. And when clients talk to me about raising their children in terms of religion, I say, well, do it. That way they know what they're fighting if they need to fight.
Yes, indeed. I had the good fortune of being in schools that encouraged free thinking.
Mhm.
Now, these were not in any way special schools. I went to Catholic high schools,
Ah,
but I will always value the amazing debates that we used to have, particularly in theology, where
right.
different ethical questions were posed.
Yeah.
Our teachers were never prescriptive. They were saying, okay, so here's what the church says. What do you think? And so there would be these wonderful, lively debates. And that, I feel, is hugely important and is disappearing at an alarming rate from what I
Yes,
could
it
tell.
is. Yes, it is.
And this has nothing to do with religion, because I'm seeing
That's
this
right.
in the secular schools
Yeah.
actually more than in the religious schools.
Yeah.
So this is how you think, and this is the only way to think, because everything else is wrong. And that makes me deeply uncomfortable, to say the least. So listening to you and why you ended up choosing the people that you chose resonates very strongly with me, and perhaps is one of the reasons why your book is so appealing. Not, I imagine, not just to me, but to many.
Yeah, I've gotten some really positive responses from some of my longtime students, which is really gratifying. I'm waiting for the quote professional astrologers to weigh in, but that'll happen.
Well, you're talking to one now.
I know. Yes, of course.
You're talking to one now, and I'm fully behind you on this.
I want to say one more thing about sort of conformism. In our modern quote information age, it's paradoxical that we have so much ready information at our disposal, and people have sort of isolated themselves into little bubbles. And so part of the decline of dialectic is that people only talk to people whom they agree with. they're afraid to talk to other people.
Well, there is a
And
demonizing that's going on
yeah,
all sides
yep.
against the others. So it's very difficult. But I think I would put this down to Pluto in Capricorn. This idea of conformism, and it's all there in the jargon. If I hear the word compliance one more time, I think I might just
Mm.
I I do not comply. I have never wanted to comply with. I want to cooperate, but I'm
Uh-huh.
certainly not complying. And if I'm going, I need something more than you must. I'm sorry, it's always the way I am. But then I am an astrologer. I am an analytical
Yeah,
hypnotherapist.
yeah.
Do the norm. In fact, my dog, it's a running joke. I do not want an obedient dog. I want a cooperative dog. And my dog is highly cooperative. But when somebody says to me, oh, he's so obedient, I'm absolutely horrified. so, so this is it's one of those things, isn't it? I think for many of us who are naturally inclined to explore, this era has been and continues to be very challenging. And we are, I think, going to come out of it and resolve it, etc. But
And
it's
it can, because of its challenge, it can bring out the best in us. It is possible because we have opportunities and we have and the challenges are, they're large, but they're not overwhelming. And sometimes we need to cheer ourselves up.
indeed we do. And I think this is where understanding ourselves helps, understanding others helps. And the beauty of astrology is it helps us to do exactly that.
Yes.
And so,
Astrology helps a lot. Knowing our history helps a lot.
that brings us to your wonderful book, which is another way in which we can help our knowledge of astrology expand and increase our understanding of each other. And the book is called Astrology and the Lives of People. Joseph, thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. All right.
Thank you all for watching. I will be putting a link to Joseph's book in the description box. Joseph, if people want to find out more about what you do, what is your website?
You don't even have to write it down. It's astrologyinstitute.com.
I will be putting a link to that
Thank
in
you.
the description box.
Thank you. And I'm happy to talk with anybody about anything.
Well, you've got Mercury in Sagittarius. I would expect that.
Yeah, watch what you ask for.
Thank you once again. And
all right, Anna. Be good. All right.
Thank you all for watching. And do remember also, if you're interested in learning about astrology, there is my website to explore. Next time, we're going to be looking at famous people who use astrology. Until then, goodbye.